version of Elementary OS Loki is out, and it's more than a skin-deep update with lots of nice changes and improvements and a big new banner feature. Daniel Foray, the founder of Elementary OS, joins me to talk about the App Center and more. Elementary OS is one of the Linux distributions. Every time I install it, which is generally whenever they have news, I am then compelled, at least for a few moments, to put it on all of the things. It's such a slick, such a well-performing, good-looking distribution, Daniel. I always really respect the work you guys do, and I'm super excited about some of the new news you have, so thank you for joining me, sir.
Thanks a lot for having me on. I'm pretty excited about this release, too.
Yeah, well, I know from our previous conversations that a lot of work behind the scenes has been going into this. This is the new release to Loki. So am I right? It's Loki 0.41?
Yeah, that's correct. So we're calling it a point release because it's still built on the same base. But this actually represents the development work we've been doing for the last 8 months. And it's not just minor package version bumps. We didn't just bump a few libraries. This represents like tons of new features and bug fixes, and it's all in our blog post. But it's a lot of work that we've been putting into Loki.
I mean, people are going to appreciate probably like the new hardware enablements and stuff like that. So for somebody like myself, I tried out Loki when it first came out. I liked it a lot, but I haven't been using it as my daily driver since. So when I reloaded after this new release, to me, I saw a lot of new stuff. To me, it seemed like a lot of things were new. But I suppose if I've been a Loki user for a while now, I've just been getting these updates incrementally. But there is something large that probably just got pushed down to most people's computers, and that's the new App Center, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the new big exciting one as we timed that to come out with the ISO. So we've been seeing a lot of feedback about it on social media, and it seems like people are really excited about it, and it's been really cool to finally get it out there.
Yeah, and this is after you guys did a crowdfunder to get people to go out and help you put together in the sprint. And then you guys all got together and banged out some of the deets on it. And then, of course, it's been cooking now. And the thing that's sort of the big headline feature about the App Center is it's not just like a package manager anymore. It's a full-on app store, yeah?
Yeah, so that's the big headlining feature is that we now have a submission process. So people can go to developer.elementary.io and sign up there and submit their apps. And they can actually monetize their apps. And we brought pay what you want into App Center.
Pay what you want. Now that's pretty cool because that's something that's obviously been huge with like Humble Bundle and stuff like that. Of course, it also means there's a risk that people aren't going to pay anything, Daniel. So what do you, how do you walk that line? Is $0 and even an option?
It is. It is an option.
Why did you do that? Why did you do that?
There's a couple of reasons. One is philosophically, we have $0 on our website as well, and the way we think about it is, right. And the way we think about it is that we really want people to pay for software, but some people just can't afford to pay for software. Yeah. And even in some countries, like $1 is too much. You know. So we want to make it so if you honestly can't afford it, like that shouldn't be a blocker to you being able to have like quality open source software.
Okay, I'm just going to play, I completely agree, but I'm just going to play devil's advocate because first of all, it's not like the App Center is the only place to get software. Somebody could go get a deb if they didn't want to pay for it. And second of all, it seems like this is crucially important that your users actually pay for the software. A, because it's the only way you're probably going to get more developers in. B, everybody's going to have their eyes on this because as far as I know, you guys are the only distribution doing this right now. And so it seems like the attention is going to be on how this project goes, and giving people an option not to pay is a big risk.
Yeah, and you know, so far from what we've seen for our distro downloads, you know, people have decided to pay and pay enough to where, you know, we have our company, and you know, this is my full-time job off Pay What You Want. You know, we have 3 people on salary from Pay What You Want. But, you know, like you said, if people really want, they can go get the software somewhere else. And so as a technical thing, like it doesn't really make sense to try to enforce a minimum value because that's not actually a real promise that we can make to developers. There's always a way for someone to just circumvent it and get their app for free anyway. So we decided, you know, we're not going to fight our users on this. If they want to get it for free, they're going to get it for free, but we're going to make it as easy as possible and as painless as possible for them to support the developers that they use their software.
So let's talk about easy, because props to you guys. I tried it out before the show, and you hit the app you want to install. By default, I was looking at like Notes Up. It's $1. You hit that, and if it's like the first time, or I don't know if it's for future purchase too, but it's just, to me, what appears to be a very clean, simple, I would guess, Stripe interface.
Yeah, we use Stripe on the back end. So we modeled our payment dialog off of Stripe Connect, which is their kind of implementation, and it's super simple. They put a lot of design hours into it, so I'm really confident in imitating their implementation there. And I think it's really easy to use. You just jump in, like you said, you put your card details in. We don't have saving payments yet, but that's like high up on the roadmap. We just got to make sure that we can do this in like a really secure manner, and then.
So I will get prompted on. I get prompted on my next purchase as well.
Yeah, so it'll be like set and forget. You just put your card in there. We'll save a token securely,
Yeah,
and then you'll just be able to unlock it with your key ring, kind of thing.
Just so I understand, what information does the Elementary OS project hold after I complete a transaction?
We actually don't hold any payment information whatsoever. It goes through Stripe, so your card number and all that jazz all goes to Stripe. The only thing that we see is your email address, but we don't store it. We only use it because we send you a receipt. So it gets shot off to we're using Mandrill for our emails, and so it gets shot up to Mandrill, and that's the only piece of personal information that even touches our servers.
Daniel, I gotta say, from past app stores, I mean, the biggest stands out, of course, would be Click and Run, but also Canonical's app store, Software Center on Ubuntu, very kludgy. You had to go through and create an Ubuntu One account and then associate a credit card and set up your shipping address and all of this stuff for buying a digital piece of software. The experience in the Elementary App Store is much cleaner and much smoother. So it seems like using modern technologies, you guys have really been able to make something that is, I would argue, pleasant to use, which is a pretty unique experience when you're checking out and buying software to be able to say it was pleasant to use. But Daniel, with all of the software available, with things like Stripe available and all of this, why are you guys the only one doing this?
That's a really good question, actually. I don't know why we're the only ones doing this. I guess we just hit it at the right time. Like, this is a good time for where all the parts and pieces are available, and it just took somebody to come together and put it into a kind of a cohesive whole. So, GitHub's really good now, and it's really popular, and people really enjoy using it, and they have all the right APIs for us to be able to pull apps from GitHub really easily. And Stripe Connect is pretty mature and a good product now, and a lot of other companies like Lyft are using Stripe Connect to power their payments, and so I think it's just a really good time in the internet and in the industry for these kind of apps to be built.
As someone who's always getting the question of how do I make money on the desktop for Linux on our Coder Radio program, I'm very excited about what you guys are doing. And so I thought maybe we'd talk about some of the headwinds that I'm seeing online. People have some criticisms, and to me, they seem on the face of kind of ridiculous, because probably the biggest one I'm seeing is, well, what's the big deal? This is pretty simple. There's not a lot going on here. It looks like it's a software repo and you can buy some software. I don't even see the ability to review or leave a rating. What's going on here? This is pretty obvious. But it to me, Daniel, that comment that I'm seeing on several different sites and mostly on Reddit, it seems to me to sort of betray an understanding of how your project works. Your project seems to work in a way that is actually sustainable. And this is where I wanted to get your comment, because you didn't wait until everything was 100%. You got something working. You got something shippable that delivered what you promised and actually got it out the door. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think people, if they reset the way they think about this, it makes a ton of sense why it is the state that it is.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, the first version that we shipped of App Center when we released Loki 8 months ago was a package manager. And it was just bare bones. It could install and uninstall software from the repos. And this is the next iteration where we've added payments, and we're now working with this API. And then we had to build a whole new piece of software to handle the application submissions and connecting to your Stripe account, things like that. So it is an iterative process. And when we started from a minimum viable product, they call it, and so we're working, on each step to just add a little feature here and some refinements there, and then release that in chunks. And you know, it still takes a while to do all that kind of stuff. And I know that it can be downplayed as like, yeah, okay, you know, they just connected this thing to that thing. But you can go on GitHub right now, github.com/elementary, and you can see the code for both App Center and the dashboard, which is codenamed Houston. And you can see all the work that's been putting into it. And you know, we actually had to hire a guy to build this product. So,
can you talk a little bit about that?
About the hiring process, or
yeah, I mean that seems like a big step for the project.
Yeah, well, we hired kind of internally from our pool of
awesome, good, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we had this guy Blake, who was, I mean, he's been around for a long time and helped us on web stuff for quite a while, and we kept talking about, oh, we want to build this product and stuff, and we found out that, hey, you know, Blake's pretty good at Node.js, and so we started talking to him more about it, and you know, just pitched the idea. And we actually had a couple of previous meetups that we did where we were working on some of the like architecture pieces and deciding like, okay, how does this system work? And then so we finally got all that in place and kind of pulled the trigger on it and said, hey, this is a product that we want to build. It's going to take a developer's dedicated attention. And so we hired him to do it. And we believed that, you know, we're going to hire him right now, and it's going to pay off later. The return on investment. As
a small business owner, I understand that gamble you're taking there. And God, I respect that, because you know what it means is like when you guys commit to something, you're like, well, here's the actual internal personnel assignment that will make sure this actually happens. And it's not just all of a sudden a random task that falls on somebody else's shoulders that they have to do. And that's the real kind of business structuring behind a project that I think makes things successful. And it's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's been the big stall on actually delivering a working App Center for a long time. I mean, this has been a product that we wanted to build for years, and it never got built. And I think that that's largely in part to the fact that we weren't able to throw the money at it, I guess, you know.
Sure.
We needed that, like, that dedicated resource.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's fascinating. So, okay, I got to ask you two questions. Let's start with the bad one and then end on the positive one. The bad one is, what do you think it says if this just sort of is a mediocre success at best? What does that say? And then the second question is what does it say if it's a rather big success and it helps fund future development of the entire Elementary OS project?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now the worst case scenario is that now all our users have access to the latest version of a bunch of really cool apps that have been built for Elementary OS. Yeah, I mean that's the point we're at right now, right? Is that we have these awesome custom tailored apps that people are submitting, and they're pushing updates to them. You know, we've been working with our beta testers, and they push like several updates through there, and they're continuing to make more updates.
You have one yourself, which is pretty nice. It's a little minimal weather app, which I really like.
Yeah, I really wanted to dog food the process myself. But I just approved an update this morning for a developer who built a little Debian package installer. And just since the other day, he had some people who downloaded his app, reported a couple issues. He fixed them, pushed a release, and it's published today. So, you know, that's our worst case scenario, is we have this really fast deployment mechanism for developers to get feedback from users and ship those apps, you know.
Yeah, and
really
I suppose quickly. Even with fairly minimal engagement, it helps sort of pay for itself. But it seems like with a successful level of engagement, it could be a game changer for Elementary OS, and it could be a game changer for getting people to develop software for desktop Linux. Like the successful version of the story seems huge. Do you agree?
Yeah, you know, and I've seen a couple comments from people that they always ask, you know, how come you guys are spending resources on this instead of this feature on this app or this feature on this app? And you got to look at it from a business strategy point of view and say that, you know, if this is a successful product, this is potentially like a huge source of income. And if this is successful, that means that we can use this revenue to hire new people to put their attention on building that feature and that feature.
Yeah, and so now the question becomes, how do you make it successful? And it seems like one of the ways to make it successful would be to keep it fresh, to keep new software coming in, to give me a reason to open it up and check out what's new. How do you do that, though?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things, and one is that we got to do things that aren't scalable, right? Like a big company like Apple or Google doesn't have the ability to have one-on-one time with every developer, and we can do that. So, we've been reaching out to people and we've been talking to them one-on-one and helping them get their apps into App Center, and talking to them through how they feel about the dashboard and making sure that it's a pleasant experience for them. And so that's, we're doing our best to show some love to our developers, and love is something that doesn't scale to these other companies, and I think that's a huge competitive advantage for us.
And one of the things I think I would just add to that is you guys have an actual story, which I hate using that term because it sounds sort of debaggy, but it is sort of the best way to say you guys have an actual story around how do I publish applications for Elementary OS, and it's not just from now I can make money, but it's also from a design reference standpoint, tool sets, the Granite, the foundation library for Elementary OS apps, which gives you common sets of widgets. It's really like it's the Linux distribution that has the most A to Z process that a developer can follow from inception to publishing and selling the application. It's good work, man.
Thanks. Yeah, it's something that I kept seeing developers struggle with, and something that we've tried to do a lot is that developers come in from other platforms and they want to know, how do I build an app for this platform? And the answer that a lot of other distros give is, you can do it however you want. You can do it like this or like that, or use this toolkit, or it's confusing and they don't want all these options. They're like, well, how do I do it though? Just give me the one. So if we have the one true development path, it's easier. People can come in and they can focus less on making a lot of choices they don't really care about, and focus more on building the cool app that they envision.
So I just have one more App Center question, then I just want to move on to a couple like big picture future stuff. So is it safe to infer from our conversation that things like ratings, reviews, and whatnot will be coming to future editions of the App Store?
Yeah, definitely. And we actually had a couple of design sessions during our sprint that we did from the crowdfunding campaign, where we talked about ratings and reviews, and what we think is not quite right about some of the systems that exist right now, what we like about some of the systems. And so we're still trying to decide exactly how we want to proceed with that, but it is totally on the radar. And we think that keeping people engaged with application developers is super important. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that in a way where the feedback is useful. Yeah. And you're not just like getting inundated with like comments that don't apply to that version, or duplicated comments.
Right. Something that might have been fixed.
So or just like arbitrary rating scales that don't mean anything.
That'll be coming down the pipe in maybe potentially in the Loki release.
I think so. Yeah. We're all set to continue delivering new features to this release. Cool. So I think we're just going to keep iterating on it and keep pushing out all the stuff we can.
Now, is it just me, or did I also notice that things like Intel microcode now showed up in my list of updates in the App Center, which, if I recall from the Loki original release, that wasn't a thing, right?
Yeah, and this has actually been a long time coming, is actually getting drivers into App Center finally.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, so that's something that's like a huge feature request that people have been asking for, and it took us a while to get it to work correctly, but we got it done, and now it's in, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Now, I wanted to just talk about a couple of big picture things, because the topic du jour right now is, of course, Canonical's decision to pull back from Unity, drop Unity 8, and just ship a stock GNOME desktop. Do you feel like there is going to be a shift in the market where there could be a larger opening for Elementary OS? Here's why I ask, Daniel, because when I set this thing up, it has that Unity smooth that other desktops, except for maybe KWin with Plasma, seem to kind of have. But like Windows open and launch and drag around on the screen in a way that Compiz does. And it's hard to describe it, but I've seen a lot of Unity folks that are saying, more and more actually, it's kind of getting crazy, that have tried to switch to GNOME and then have been upset with its performance, with the way things just kind of operate. Switching back to Unity, they're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I loaded Elementary on this Galago Pro over here, and I've been using it on this high DPI screen, and I have to tell you, if I was a Unity refugee, I would be seriously looking at this desktop. Your mind has to be turning on this topic. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to throw too much shade on other people, but, I see like tweets from people at certain other companies about how they're building, web apps on Windows now. And, we're focused on the Linux desktop. We're building native apps, you know, for Linux, on Linux, with Linux. So, you know, I think, you know, people ask about, you know, what companies are making money on the Linux desktop. You know, that's impossible. No, we're making money on the Linux desktop. We're here and we love it. And you know, this is our only focus.
What is next?
This is our business.
What comes next for Elementary OS? It seems like App Center is going to be a big focus for a while. I hear there's transitions from Launchpad. What's kind of coming down the pipe for the project?
Yeah, a big transition we're definitely going through right now is moving away from Launchpad to GitHub, and we're almost completed there. I mean, some other big things that are coming in general in the ecosystem is containerized application formats. You know, Snap and Flatpak are being tested right now and being deployed, and so we're going to find out, you know, probably within the next year, like what's the most viable option for us there. People are starting to ship Wayland, so that's, you know, another big looming transition is talking about moving to Wayland. So there's a lot of big things going on, but I think for us right now on the desktop, we're going to be focusing on building out a better platform, especially with respect to privacy and security features, because as we're getting these third-party applications in, there's going to be more concern about what do these third-party applications have access to. So one of the features that we shipped already in this new version of Loki is that when your microphone is in use, a little microphone icon slides out into the panel. And so you can see that something is using that microphone.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so we're working on right now to do the same thing for a whole bunch of other services. So we're going to have that for the camera, and we're going to have that for location, and we're going to have that for other devices and services that you might be concerned about. And we're going to start prompting for access to these services ahead of time. And we're going to have granular controls in system settings so that you can go and say, hey, I don't ever want this application to be able to have access to this thing.
I really look forward to watching all of that. Dang, that is, you know, I really encourage people to go try out the new release. It is very, very slick. And if you are at all interested in independent software developers making a living by selling software on Linux, or at least helping contribute to that end goal, it seems like it'd be worth giving this a try, checking out the App Center, and if you're already an Elementary OS user, consider kicking a few bucks to some of these projects and just, you know, help them experiment and test out the system. I think the end goal here could be big. One last question, Daniel, because if it does go big, you know what's going to happen. It's going to end up in the AUR. It's going to be in the Copper repo. It's going to be on the OpenSUSE build service. It'll eventually be in some sort of PPA for Ubuntu. It's going to go to every desktop. How do you feel about that possible eventuality?
I mean, there's a couple things people would have to do to port. You know, one right now is there is code in App Center that is specific to Debian packaging, specifically with related to drivers. So, you know, you're going to have to either remove that feature or help us build a feature that is distro agnostic for that. But as far as, you know, the monetization stuff, you know, I hope that people fork it and build their own implementation. I hope that there's an Ubuntu Mate App Center. You know, I hope that there's one for KDE and there's one for, you know, Mint and whatever other platform. That'd be great. I think it would be beneficial to the whole ecosystem if people knew, if big players, big ISVs knew that, hey, you know, the people on the Linux desktop buy apps. You know, if they knew that, then I think that we would have a much easier time convincing them to ship some of these like essential, you know, business pieces of software that we're missing right now.
Absolutely. And while I'm not a daily driver of Elementary OS, I am absolutely a patron, patreon.com/elementary. You might consider it too. Daniel, thank you so much for joining me and tell me about all the new stuff. Great work, man.
I'd like to love you.